I'm not a man who talks much. Never have been. My wife used to say I could go 3 days without saying an unnecessary word and be perfectly content. She wasn't wrong. Farmers learn early that the land doesn't care what you say to it. It cares what you do. So I did. For 58 years, I did. And somewhere in all that doing, I almost lost the only thing that mattered. My name is Earl. I'm 92 years old. Born in 1933 on a farm in southern Ohio, about 20 miles east of the river. My grandfather cleared that land. My father worked it. I worked it. My son works it now, though he's got equipment my grandfather wouldn't recognize and crops my father never planted. The land is the same. The creek that runs along the eastern edge is the same. The big oak at the corner of the south field. That tree was old when my grandfather was young. Some things hold. I married Dorothy in 1954. She was 21, I was 21. We'd known each other since we were children, because there weren't that many children to know out where we lived. She was the daughter of the man who ran the feed store in town. Practical family, working family, people who understood that life was mostly work, with some good things scattered through it if you paid attention. I liked that about her. I liked that she didn't expect things to be easy, and she didn't complain when they weren't. We got married in the spring, moved into the farmhouse, and started our life. 2 kids came along, a boy, then a girl. The farm was hard in those years, the late 50s and into the 60s. Prices low, weather unpredictable, the bank always somewhere in the back of your mind. Dorothy went back to work when the kids were old enough, part-time at first, then full-time as a bookkeeper for a lumber company in town. We needed the money, and she was good with numbers, and neither of us thought much about it either way. You did what needed doing. That's how we lived for a long time, side by side, working, raising kids, managing the 1,000 small problems that a farm and a family generate constantly. We were a good team. I want to say that clearly because what I'm about to tell you isn't a story about a bad marriage. It's a story about a good marriage that came very close to becoming nothing at all. Not because of anything dramatic, but because of something so quiet you can miss it entirely if you're not paying attention. The winter I'm talking about was 1971. I was 38 years old. The kids were teenagers. Dorothy was working. The farm was in decent shape. Nothing was wrong exactly, but something had been getting quieter between us for a couple of years, and I hadn't named it, and she hadn't named it, and we had both just kept going, because that's what you do on a farm. You keep going. The animals need feeding. The work doesn't stop because you have feelings about something. That January, she came to me one evening after supper and sat down at the kitchen table, not in her usual chair, in the chair across from me, which was unusual, which meant she had something to say and wanted to face me when she said it. She said, "Earl, I need to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it." I said, "All right." She said, "I feel like I'm living here alone." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, and I am not proud of this, I'm telling you exactly what I said. I said, "Dorothy, I'm here every day. I work this farm, I come in for supper, I'm here every night. How can you say you're living alone?" She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "That's exactly what I mean, Earl." I didn't understand that night. I understood it eventually. It took me longer than it should have, I'll be honest with you. But I understood it. Being present in a house is not the same as being present with a person. I was there every day. My body was there, my work was there, my habits and my schedule and my physical existence were thoroughly present on that farm. But I had stopped, gradually, without noticing, the way a field goes to weeds if you don't tend it. I had stopped being curious about her. I had stopped asking. I had stopped wondering who she was becoming, what she was thinking, what she wanted from her life beyond the practical things we managed together. I had married Dorothy, and then I had filed her away. The way you learn a piece of land and stop really seeing it because you already know it. I knew her, or I thought I knew her, and that knowing had become a kind of wall between us. I wasn't discovering her anymore. I was just confirming what I already believed. Now I want to tell you what happened after that night, because this is the part I think matters most. I could have gotten defensive. Lord knows my first instinct was defensive. I'm providing for this family. I'm working myself to the bone, and I have to sit here and be told I'm somehow not enough? That instinct was loud for about a week. I fed it, and it got louder, and I was not pleasant to be around. And then one morning I was out in the south field before dawn, February, cold enough that my breath was visible, the ground frozen. And I was thinking about what she'd said. I'm living here alone. And I thought about what it would actually mean to lose her. Not the farm running differently, not the practical adjustments. Her, Dorothy, the specific person who had been next to me for 17 years and who knew things about me that nobody else knew, and who I had somehow started treating like part of the landscape. I came in from the field and I sat down at the kitchen table, and when she came downstairs, I said, "Tell me what you need from me." Not what's wrong, because I was still thinking in terms of problems to be fixed, but it was a start. She sat down and she told me. It took a long time. I listened. Not perfectly. I'm not going to sit here at 92 and tell you I became a different man overnight, because that's not how it works, and anybody who tells you that is selling something. But I listened better than I had in years. And then I did it again the next day, and the one after that. We didn't fix everything in a week. We didn't fix everything in a year. Some things we never fully fixed. There were distances between us that had been there so long they had their own roots. But we chose each other again. That's the only way I know how to say it. We had drifted to a place where we were going through the motions, and we chose, both of us, not just me, to come back. Dorothy died 4 years ago, 88 years old. Heart gave out on a Tuesday morning in April, the kind of spring morning she loved best, warm but not hot yet, the fields just starting to green up. We had 58 years together. 41 of them were better because of that winter. So when people ask me, and my granddaughter asked me this not long ago, which is what got me thinking about all this. When people ask, how do you know if you married the wrong person? Here's what I tell them. First thing, wrong is a hard word. I've known people who were genuinely in the wrong situation, with someone harmful, with someone who had no intention of being a real partner, with someone who was pointed in a completely opposite direction from the start. That happens, and it's real, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the much more common thing, which is two people who had something real and let it go quiet on them. Because here's what I learned from that winter and from the 41 years after it. A marriage is not a thing you have. It's a thing you do every day. And the doing is not the big dramatic things. It's not the anniversaries and the vacations and the moments that make it into stories you tell later. The doing is the Tuesday morning when nothing special is happening, and you look at the person across the breakfast table, and you decide to actually see them, to be curious about them, to ask them something real, and mean it when you wait for the answer. The land teaches you this if you're paying attention. Good ground doesn't stay good on its own. You tend it, you feed it, you pay attention to what it needs, and it gives back. You neglect it, and it goes back to weeds. Doesn't matter how good the soil was when you started. Neglect is neglect. Marriage is the same. The question isn't whether you married the right person. The question is whether you're tending what you've got. Now, and I want to be careful here, because I mean this honestly and not as a way to avoid something hard. Sometimes you tend, and the other person isn't tending back. Sometimes you turn toward, and they keep turning away. Sometimes you've been trying to grow something in ground that was never going to take. That's a real thing too, and I don't want to pretend otherwise. Some marriages are genuinely wrong from the ground up, but in my experience, and I've been on this earth 92 years, and I've watched a lot of people live their lives, that's less common than we think. More common is two people who could have had something good and let the weeds take it because they were busy, because they were tired, because they assumed the other person knew what they were thinking and feeling without being told. Don't assume. That's the main thing. Don't assume the person next to you knows you love them just because you've been there for 30 years. Don't assume they know what you need. Don't assume you know what they need. Ask. Keep asking. The asking is the marriage, not the answer, the asking. Dorothy and I got to a place in the last years that I didn't expect. I thought a marriage of 50-some years would feel like a very long familiarity. Comfortable, maybe, but not alive in any particular way. I was wrong about that. In the last 10 years before she died, we talked more than we had in the first 20. Not because we had more time. We had more time because the kids were gone and the farm was less demanding. But because we had learned, somewhere in those middle years, that talking was the work. That being curious about each other was the work. That it didn't stop. The last conversation I had with her, she was in the hospital the day before she went. She said something I've thought about every day since. She said, "Earl, I'm glad you came in from the field that morning." I knew what morning she meant. I said, "I'm glad too, Dot." She said, "Most men wouldn't have." I don't know if that's true. I'd like to think more men would than she gave credit for. But I know what she meant. She meant you could have stayed defended. You could have decided you were right. You could have kept going the way we were going, and we would have survived it probably. Kept the farm, kept the family structure, kept the surface of a life. But we wouldn't have had what we had, the last 40 years of it. The real part. That's what I want to say to you. Whatever is happening between you and the person you married, the question isn't whether they're the right person. The question is whether you're willing to come in from the field. To sit down across from them, in their chair, not yours, and say, "Tell me what you need," and then be quiet long enough to actually hear it. It's a hard thing to do. It requires putting down the armor that most of us have been carrying so long we forgot it was armor. It requires being wrong about things. It requires finding out that the person you thought you knew has been growing in directions you haven't been watching. That's not a bad thing. That's a person. That's what a person is. Something that keeps growing and changing and becoming. And the only way to be married to one is to keep paying attention to who they are right now, not who you decided they were 20 years ago. I'm 92 years old, and I'm sitting on my porch in the October cold, because Dorothy always said I'd die of stubbornness before I'd die of weather. She was probably right. The oak tree at the corner of the south field is still there. The creek is still there. The land is still there. I'm glad I came in from the field that morning.